You think you know World War II, the heroes, the villains, the victories. But what if I told you that behind the official story lies another war, one filled with secret pacts, forbidden science, and atrocities so disturbing they were erased from history? This is the side of World War II you were never meant to see. As battles raged across Europe, Hitler's scientists were working on something terrifying. Weapons so advanced they seemed ripped from science fiction. These were called the Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapons. Some were real. Some remained on drawing boards. But the goal was clear: to create technologies that could turn the tide of war overnight. The V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range guided ballistic missile, rained destruction on London. Decades later, its design would inspire the rockets that carried men to the moon. Jet-powered aircraft like the Messerschmitt Me 262 appeared in the skies long before the Allies had anything close. Rumors swirled of even stranger experiments: giant tanks, super guns capable of hitting London from France, and secret chemical and biological weapons. The Allies had their own dark projects. The Manhattan Project, hidden across secret facilities in the United States, raced to create the atomic bomb. Thousands of scientists worked in secrecy, their families often not knowing what they were building, until Hiroshima and Nagasaki changed history forever. These projects remind us, World War II was not just a clash of armies. It was also the dawn of the modern arms race. While tanks thundered and bombs fell, an invisible war was being fought. One of spies, codes, and shadows. The Nazis relied on the Enigma machine, a code system so complex that German officers believed it was unbreakable. For years, it gave them confidence that their messages were safe. But in hidden huts in Bletchley Park, England, a team of codebreakers led by Alan Turing quietly cracked Enigma. Every intercepted message gave the Allies priceless intelligence. Some historians believe this shortened the war by as much as 2 years. Meanwhile, spies played deadly games across Europe and Asia. Double agents worked both sides, feeding lies, spreading propaganda, and turning battles before they even began. In one case, the Allies launched Operation Mincemeat, planting fake invasion plans on a dead body, which washed ashore in Spain. The Germans believed the documents were real and shifted their defenses, helping the Allies invade Sicily successfully. These hidden wars were never shown in classrooms, but without them, the Allies might not have won at all. When we think of World War II, most imagine Normandy, Stalingrad, or Pearl Harbor. But some of the most important battles were fought in places rarely mentioned in textbooks. In North Africa, armies clashed under the scorching desert sun. Rommel, the Desert Fox, led German forces against the British in a brutal struggle for control of vital oil routes. In the Arctic, convoys of Allied ships braved freezing seas and constant attacks to deliver supplies to the Soviet Union. Many of those men froze to death before they ever saw land. And in the Pacific Islands, soldiers fought not only the Japanese, but also jungles filled with disease, starvation, and unbearable heat. These battles were often overshadowed by Europe's headlines. But without victories in Africa, the Allies could not have invaded Italy. Without supply lines through the Arctic, the Soviet Union might not have held out against Hitler. The forgotten fronts remind us that World War II was truly global, fought not just in famous cities, but in deserts, oceans, and frozen wastelands far from home. When we think of war crimes in World War II, the Holocaust usually dominates our memory, and rightly so. But there were many other horrors that remain largely hidden, too grim or too politically uncomfortable to teach in schools. In the East, the Japanese military carried out atrocities so shocking that they were censored for decades. In Unit 731, outside Harbin in occupied China, doctors performed experiments on prisoners, dissecting them alive without anesthesia. freezing their limbs to study frostbite and deliberately infecting them with plague. Thousands died in these hidden laboratories. In Europe, German SS units committed massacres in villages like Oradour-sur-Glane in France and Lidice in Czechoslovakia, erasing entire towns in acts of terror meant to crush resistance. But the Allies were not innocent either. The firebombing of Dresden in 1945 turned a cultural city into a sea of flames, killing tens of thousands in a single night. In Japan, the firebombing of Tokyo claimed even more lives than the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These stories were inconvenient because they blurred the simple good versus evil narrative. But history is never clean. It is bloody, complex, and filled with truths that many would rather forget. On the surface, World War II looks like a simple story, Allies versus Axis. But in reality, the war was filled with secret deals, betrayals, and uneasy alliances. One of the darkest secrets was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939. For a brief time, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, sworn ideological enemies, were allies. They secretly agreed to carve up Poland and divide Eastern Europe between them. Only when Hitler betrayed Stalin in 1941 did the Soviets join the Allies. Another secret: corporations and bankers in neutral countries quietly did business with both sides. Swiss banks held Nazi gold, some of it stolen from victims of the Holocaust. Companies in Sweden supplied Germany with crucial iron ore, keeping its war machine alive. Even in America, before Pearl Harbor, certain industries resisted cutting ties with German firms. And then there were betrayals within nations. In France, the Vichy government collaborated with the Nazis, handing over Jews and suppressing resistance fighters. In Yugoslavia and Greece, entire factions turned against each other, fueling bloody civil wars under the shadow of the global conflict. World War II was not only a war between nations, it was also a war of secret arrangements, backroom deals, and betrayals that reshaped the post-war world. When most people think of World War II's nuclear story, they think of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But the deeper truth is more chilling. The atomic bomb was not just a weapon, it was a signal to the future. The Manhattan Project was the largest scientific secret in history. Entire towns like Los Alamos and Oak Ridge were built in silence, guarded by military police. Families lived behind barbed wire, never knowing what they were working on. Some machinists and factory workers thought they were making airplane parts. Stolen art, hidden gold, forgotten knowledge still linger, waiting to be uncovered. The darkest secrets of World War II are often hidden in laboratories and camps where science was twisted into something monstrous. In Germany, the SS oversaw cruel experiments at concentration camps. Prisoners were frozen in ice water to test hypothermia survival methods, forced into high-altitude chambers until their lungs burst, and injected with poisons to study effects. These were not for medical cures, they were for war. Japan's Unit 731 went even further. Prisoners, including women and children, were dissected alive, infected with diseases, and exposed to chemical weapons. Villages in China were deliberately contaminated with plague and cholera as part of German warfare testing. Here's the most disturbing part. After the war, many of these scientists were not punished. Some German doctors were tried at Nuremberg, but others were quietly recruited by the Allies. The US and Soviet Union both wanted their knowledge for the coming Cold War. In exchange for immunity, war criminals handed over research buildings